Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hi, this is The Author Show, and I'm your host, Linda Thompson. Before I introduce our guests, just a quick reminder that selected interviews are available in our iPhone app, which can be downloaded in the App Store, as well as on TV on the Roku channel and Amazon Fire TV. Our app name on all platforms is The Author Show. Would you dance with the devil in New York City, even if she wanted to kill you? That's the first sentence in the synopsis for American Blasphemer. The debut novel by John Matthew Gillen is written where each chapter delivers new characters and unforgettable experiences. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely want more, and John is here to tell us. John, welcome to The Author Show.
Thank you, Linda. Happy to be here.
John, will you give us a quick overview of American Blasphemer?
Sure, absolutely. So American Blasphemer is the story of a lovesick writer named John who quits his job and moves to New York City after getting dumped by his girlfriend. So it's kind of a wild book, but it's very heartfelt and intimate at the same time, sort of in the tradition of Dennis Johnson, Charles Bukowski, Hunter S. Thompson type of book. And each chapter, like you said, is a different part of John's story. One chapter, he gets into a knife fight with a naked sex addict. Another one, he meets Bob Dylan in the Chelsea Hotel. One chapter is about his older brother having an acid freak out on Christmas. And one was about a 150-year-old cathedral that burns down in Manhattan. And in one chapter, he actually breaks into Graceland to go visit Elvis's grave. So this whole long tale kind of culminates with a big showdown where a tattooed witch tries to get John to join her coven after meeting him at a rock concert in Times Square. That's sort of the big climax of the book at the end there. Yeah, so that's a little bit of an overview of what kind of a story you're in for with American Blasphemer.
Well, since American Blasphemer is your first book, do you think there's any other author who may have influenced your writing style?
Well, I think that's certainly the case, but I think a lot of authors, or anyone who does creative work, has certainly got a lot of influences, both conscious and unconscious. I don't know if there's anything I would directly compare it to, although I have heard it suggested that it's, let's say, reminiscent of Jesus' Son by Dennis Johnson, because it's sort of like an anthology-style novel built around a few central characters with a consistent tone throughout the book. But as far as direct literary influences, certainly Hunter S. Thompson and Charles Bukowski, as I said, but literary influences I don't think are limited to novelists. So I would say Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan and Elvis, Hank Williams, Marty Scorsese, Paul Schrader, Kierkegaard and Blaise Pascal, philosophers. There was actually a lot of Don Quixote in this book, which I discovered as I was writing it, which sort of surprised me. And then Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentinian author, is, I think, for my money, probably the best writer of the last century. So he's certainly been an influence. But then I think another thing, and this is kind of maybe a strange thing about me. I don't know how people will react to this, but I've read the Bible over 15 times in my life, and I read it once a year. So that certainly had a literary impact on me in some way.
So, John, how on earth did you come up with the idea for your storyline in American Blasphemer?
Well, I think the storyline sort of emerged out of necessity, really, because all of these individual stories are things that happened to me that were very formative experiences, and I was looking for a place to put them. And as I was writing these things down and sort of telling the individual stories, I realized that they were part of a larger story. And that larger story became the novel American Blasphemer. So the organizational structure of the novel was helpful for me to sort of bring together all of these different events and stories that I wanted to tell and to sort of present them in a way where they added up to something larger than just the sum of their parts.
So are you telling me in some way this could be considered a memoir?
I wouldn't go that far, but I think, look, I mean, I think that the line between fiction and nonfiction is imaginary. And I think that the best work in both, let's say, branches of literature have elements of both of them, right? So I think that the honest answer is that a lot of these are based on true stories. Some of them have a little bit of creative license. Some of them are edited or, let's say, smoothed out for clarity or what have you. But yeah, I think what I was struggling with here was everybody has extremely important experiences in their lives that I think it's important to set down, to process, but there's not a lot of places for these stories to go. And I felt like this creative act of putting these into a novel would help me process some of these experiences that I've had. And so that's the source material was both truth and fiction, let's say that.
Well, did you write your book while picturing any particular type of reader?
Yeah, I think, to be completely honest, I know this sounds weird, but I was thinking about people who don't like reading. And I was writing a book for people who don't enjoy 1,000-page long, dense tomes of literature. And although I think that those kinds of books are very beautiful, I think that's very far removed from the truth of modern American life. Everything here is very fast and dirty and full of immoral chaos. And I was looking for something that more captured the spirit of the times that we're in and some of the problems that we're dealing with living in a world like ours. So I think that was kind of the reader I had in mind, was somebody who wants to hear something that's deeply personal, but also has a lot of universal resonance and that isn't sugar-coated. I'm not sticking to established formulas. I'm not pandering to the audience. In a lot of ways, some of these stories are very controversial. But I think if you're not writing something where you're taking some risks, both personally and creatively, then you might as well go sell bubblegum because, we've got enough content to fill infinity. So people who want something different will enjoy it.
John,
Sure.
One reviewer wrote that while American Blasphemer was crude, vulgar, and brutally honest, they thought that every person claiming to be a Christian should read it. Will you please share your thoughts on that comment?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I don't know if I would personally feel comfortable asserting that every person claiming to be a Christian should read it, but Christianity has played, for better or worse, a very large role in my life. And I think that to me, it's not something that's in books and in history, but it's something that's very active and still has significance in modern life. So I think that people who are trying to find a place for their Christian faith in the modern world will hopefully find something both challenging and helpful in this book.
Well, I'm also very intrigued by your chapter titles. I detect both a sense of irony and of humor in these titles. Am I correct?
I think there's a lot of things in some of these titles, but yeah, anything specifically that's grabbing your attention?
Not right off the top of my head. I just looked at your chapter titles and I laughed quite a bit while I was going through them.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the titles at least.
Well, apart from being an author, you write and direct short films. Will you please share with us a bit about your favorite?
Sure. So I think my favorite short film that I've produced would probably be American Ugly. And I know that American Ugly and American Blasphemer have similar titles, but that's where the similarities end. But yeah, American Ugly is a story. It's a short film about a couple who are arguing about whether or not it's still okay to watch American Beauty after finding out about Kevin Spacey's history of sexual assault. And that film kind of came out of, again, a personal issue I was having of trying to reconcile what to do with a lot of very beloved pieces of art that were created by people who have done unconscionable, sinful things, right? So I think it's something that a lot of people are struggling with, and I was trying to make a piece of art that sort of addressed that conflict that we're all experiencing right now.
You have an extremely interesting bio, John. Will you please share a little bit about your experience with the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court?
Oh, man, I'm going to get in trouble for this one. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a little bit. This story is much longer, but suffice it to say, I was in a circumstance wherein I was granted an audience with the then chief clerk of the United States Supreme Court, and I asked him some questions about his participation in certain, not necessarily satanic rituals, but let's say questionable Babylonian pagan idol worship that was going on in a place called Bohemian Grove in Northern California. And I asked him this publicly, and he sort of gave this answer about, well, boys will be boys. You can't make a big deal out of this. But then afterwards, he came up to me and literally just cussed me out and told me to get the hell out and all those other things because he didn't care for the question, I guess, or maybe the manner in which I put it. But I felt it was a fair question to ask an elected official. Well, I guess he wasn't elected, but he was a part of our government, and I wanted to know what he was up to.
Have you always been a storyteller, and have you always seen yourself as a writer?
I think I've always known that. I mean, there's actually something else in my bio about when I was a kid, I think about 10 years old or so. My parents sent me to this Christian summer camp, and there's about 1,000 kids in this place or whatever it is. And they offered different elective activities that every camper could do that summer, whatever it was, like tying ropes or building campfires, whatever it was. And one of the classes was storytelling. And I was the only camper who chose storytelling. And the director of the entire camp came up to me and said, could you please choose something else so we don't have to offer this class this year? And I said no, because that was the only thing that I wanted to learn about was storytelling. So I think I've always been interested in books, movies, and in storytelling itself.
Have you always been that outspoken?
Well, when I felt like it was important enough, yes.
Good for you. Okay, let's dream a little bit. Let's say that American Blasphemer has been selected to become a feature film. Who would you choose as a star to play John?
Shia LaBeouf. I think he is, well, first of all, I think he would be right for the part. He's maybe a couple of years older now than the character would be, but I think he brings a level of authenticity to his work that stands out to me. I don't see a lot of artists working in the dramatic arts who have as much passion for their work and as much, I guess, like candidness. You know, he's not putting on a false front. He's not censoring things for public relations. And whatever you think of him personally, I know there's a lot of, like I was talking about Kevin Spacey's history of sexual assault. Shia lately, things have come out about him that are, let's say, if not criminal, less than savory, certainly. But I think that he would be an appropriate casting choice, at least just off the top of my head.
Interesting. So now that you've written your first book, what's next? Are you writing another one?
So I've got a couple of different projects going. I've got a book that might be written on a certain element of film history called Touching Blue Velvet about the works of David Lynch. I've got a collection of poetry that's forming that I don't know if I'm going to move forward with or not right now. I am working on a couple of other novels. I'm writing screenplays right now, actually. So I've got 4 feature film screenplays that I'm in the process of completing and editing and smoothing out, which I'm going to start sending out. And one of them, particularly Kitchen, I think is something I might try to produce in the near future once the vaccine for the COVID virus kind of gets into place and it's a little bit easier to do work in creative groups like that. But yeah, there's a lot in the works still.
Is there a moral of the story in American Blasphemer that you would like readers to grasp?
Oh, there most certainly is. But I don't think that, look, T.S. Eliot said, somebody asked him what he meant by his poem, The Wasteland, and he said, I meant what I said. If I could have said it any other way, I would have. And in some sense, making a film, writing a poem, dancing a dance, or singing a song, all these things are ways of communicating things. And to try to restate it in another way, with another kind of language or communication, something is always lost. So I think the book itself, these individual stories, at the end of the book have a chapter called Behold the Face of God, which is very dense and heavy with philosophy and theology. But what I'm trying to do is pull together a lot of these disparate experiences and the chaos that's held within them and try to make sense of it all. And I think the only way that that works is that if you look at the whole mosaic. So there is definitely something I'm trying to say with this book, but it's not something that I can put into simple language. You'd have to read the book.
That's fair enough. So now, will you please read a short excerpt from American Blasphemer for our listeners?
Sure, absolutely. Be happy to. So this excerpt comes near the beginning. It's from a chapter titled Halloween in the Chelsea Hotel. And the character John has just wandered through the West Village on Halloween and is now sitting in the lobby of the Hotel Chelsea. And this is what he says. This is where I'd like to tell you that wild, crazy story. I'd like to say that it's some special magic hour of the night when I was waiting all alone in the lobby of the Hotel Chelsea. The great American poet-prophet dragged himself in off West 23rd Street and sat down next to me. And I'd like to tell you that he explained everything, that he gave me all the answers to all the questions and all the solutions to all the problems, that he told me how to feed all hungers, pacify all wars, and turn lead into gold, that he explained every note and word of his songs, and just because he had the time, even taught me to play his guitar. Then he stood up and said something like, if you need me, I'll be out there on the American road, singing and playing God's salvation for all the sinners. And if you're ever on your own, a complete unknown, with no direction home, just remember, kid. He walked to the door, opened it, and looked back and said, the answer is blowing in the wind.
Oh my gosh. I absolutely love that. So now, where can we learn more about you? And where can we purchase American Blasphemer?
Well, you may purchase American Blasphemer and learn more about me by visiting my website, johnmatthewgillen.com. And there are links there to major book retailers, online retailers, where you can find my book. It's available any place books are sold online. And there are also several things about my film projects. You can watch my short film, American Ugly, and several other projects I have up there as well. So that's a good place to go to visit to learn more.
We've been talking with John Matthew Gillen, author of American Blasphemer. John, I can't wait to delve into your book deeper, and I'm sure you've captured the attention of a lot of our audience. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and I do hope that you'll consider coming back to chat with us again when you publish your next book.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Thanks for having me.
I found this fabulous review for John's book. This unabashedly honest romp with heartbreak will satisfy readers who are looking for a story of self-discovery under psychedelic circumstances. This delightfully lecherous debut is a masterful exercise in debauchery, understanding religious interpretations, and coping with heartbreak. Well, if that has you yearning for more, please go to johnmatthewgillen.com and order your copy today. And when you finish, don't forget to post your review. And please share this interview with your friends so that they too may become acquainted with our author. And remember, The Author Show may be accessed at any time at theauthorshow.com. Plus, selected interviews can also be found on major platforms such as Amazon Fire TV, the Roku channel, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and many more. Whether you're an author who would like to be featured or a reader in search of new books, theauthorshow.com is a really great place to start.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time.